Prosecutors in New York have opened a criminal investigation into Donald Trump's real estate empire. The former president says the business dealings being scrutinized were all above board, but the case still raises the unprecedented prospect of a U.S. leader going on trial and possibly facing jail time. Paolo Montecillo reports.
Donald Trump has been under nearly constant investigation since 2016. And it didn't stop when he left the White House. The New York Attorney General's office on Tuesday launched a criminal probe into the Trump Organization.
We have informed the Trump Organization that our investigation into the organization is no longer purely civil in nature. We are now actively investigating the Trump Organization in a criminal capacity.
The investigation is focused on the family-owned company's finances before Trump became president. It's accused of undervaluing assets to trim its tax bill. And investigators are looking into whether it overvalued properties to secure loans and better insurance premiums. New York City prosecutors are building a separate but overlapping criminal case that could include similar tax and insurance fraud. Those efforts got a boost in February when the Supreme Court gave the Manhattan District Attorney's Office access to Trump's tax returns. Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen is a witness in both cases.
How important will the tax records and financial statements, the DA's office received after last week's Supreme Court decision, be to the investigation?
Yeah, that sounds to me like the Holy Grail.
Trump says the investigations against him are all politically motivated. But his potential troubles go beyond money. Officials in the state of Georgia are also trying to determine if Trump should be prosecuted for pressuring election officials during last year's polls.
Biden needs to allow professional prosecutors to go forward and to prosecute whatever crimes took place, whether the assault on the Capitol, whether the phone call to Georgia election officials, or other issues such as Trump's taxes or his use of his presidency to advance his business interests.
Trump was the first American president to take the job without any prior government experience. He was also impeached a record 2 times. And if any of the prosecutors in New York or Georgia decide to go ahead, Trump will be making history again. He'll be the only former commander-in-chief to face criminal charges.
And that's a record in the history of
Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
There's a lot to unpack here. Let's try to do that with Scott Lucas in Birmingham in the UK. He's a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. Welcome to the show. Now, previously this was a civil investigation, which has now been converted into a criminal investigation. Could you help us understand what is the difference and why is that happening?
Well, first, an important clarification that your correspondent made, and that is there has been a criminal investigation since February, but that was through the Manhattan District Attorney, the New York City District Attorney. And why was that important? Because as your correspondent noted, there are 8 years of financial records that prosecutors were finally able to obtain. These are tax returns, these are business filings, these are declarations for insurance values, declarations for trying to obtain loans from banks. The New York State announcement today is a follow-on from that they are now alongside that investigation. Now, how's that different from a civil investigation? Well, in a civil investigation, if you are found to, for example, have fiddled your tax returns, have committed insurance fraud, but in a civil investigation, you don't face prison time. You might face fines, you might face demands for repayment, but you don't go behind bars. Once it becomes criminal, and the charges are tax evasion, insurance fraud, fraud in declarations to banks, then you do face that possibility of prison, if not for Donald Trump, for some of his high-ranking officials at his Trump Organization.
Now, the Trump camp has maintained that this is all politically motivated, and the cases that are being led by both attorneys general in Manhattan and in New York, those are both political appointees. So is there then a political angle here?
Look, if Donald Trump shot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue in New York today, and he once famously bragged he could get away with it, he would declare that when he was put on trial, it was politically motivated. The question is not whether Donald Trump says this is politically motivated, but whether, according to a legal standard, there is evidence that a crime has been committed. And again, let's review that this is 3 different fronts where crimes may have been committed. There are the financial crimes in New York State and New York City. There are the possible crimes trying to overturn November's election by putting pressure on Georgia's officials. And thirdly, there's still the possibility of criminal charges over the Trump-Russia inquiry. Because remember that the Mueller report said that Donald Trump, there is significant evidence, not just politically motivated, but evidence that Donald Trump obstructed or tried to obstruct justice on at least 8 occasions. Now, I think that all of these charges will wind up in court? No. I think the most likely will be the financial cases. But for Donald Trump to simply, as he did today, put out a 900-word statement and say, go away, folks, there's nothing to see here, that's Donald Trump's tactics. He got away with it while he was president. He got away with it while he's on Twitter, but he's no longer on Twitter, and he's no longer president.
But Professor, some of these allegations have been around for years. You mentioned some. There are some that go back even further. There are sexual assault allegations, for example, tax evasion, tax fraud. Why has it taken so long to launch investigations against him?
Well, because of a couple of things. The first thing is that generally in the American system, if you're a poor person and you face these charges, you generally are going to wind up behind bars. If you're a wealthier person and you can afford to hire lawyers and you can carry out delaying tactics, including for years, decades, not releasing your tax returns, you can get away with it. And secondly, these are very complicated cases. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office is going through not just thousands, tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of documents. And to get into a court, you have to have, well, a fairly open and shut case, because those lawyers, that Trump's lawyers, will pick apart any loopholes in it. And the other thing is Donald Trump himself. Look, you know that I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but the one thing you can say about Trump is that whenever he's under pressure, he is aggressive, he's bullying, he will say black is white, up is down. And those tactics, especially in a social media age, of saying, I'm not the criminal, I'm the victim, they work. Well, they've worked so far.
And we can
certainly
expect more of those fireworks as this investigation proceeds. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Scott Lucas. Now,